Hi peeps! There is a mod in Elden Ring that lets you randomize the locations of items and enemies in the game. This means any boss could be anywhere, and items that you would normally only get after a tough boss fight can be found lying around like discarded trash. I decided to take on the randomizer mod with a unique twist of my own. Instead of beating the final boss, I would create 7 randomized goals I needed to complete in order to consider my randomizer run complete. This is the story of how I spent nearly 20 hours trying to reach my self-imposed goals in Elden Ring with a randomizer mod. I wrote up a little program that would help me generate the random goals I wanted, and here are the results. We had to kill a Raya Lucaria soldier, slay the Mimic tier boss, and find a bunch of items. Side note, I didn't realize Brave's leather helm is actually an item you can't get in-game. It wasn't until about halfway through the run I realized. It just kind of exists in Elden Ring's code, mocking us. I did end up pulling out the gold randomizer again to get us an achievable goal of Malekith's armor instead later on. I decided to start as the Wretch, because even though I only barely completed the game once, and only have barely passable gamer skills, why not make a randomizer run more challenging, right? After getting my butt kicked by the Grafted Shade boss, and waking up in the lands between, I decided to jump into the Cave of Knowledge to check out what the tutorial section looked like. I think I made a mistake. After running past the insanity that is the randomized tutorial cave, I decided to check out what the tutorial boss is. Maybe it won't be too bad. It's 3 Crystallians. This randomizer mod is going to be real interesting. I decided not to be insane and not to try to actually beat them. Before we leave the starting area, we get lucky and find our first pieces of equipment. A pair of Rotten Duelist Greaves and Vike's War Spear. Looking good already. Let's head outside, maybe it's safer out there. Even the NPCs have randomized gear on. Vari sure looks weird with that. Oh look, it's a demi-human queen. Wow, look at that damage. Yeah, maybe we'll fight her later. Let's go to the Church of Ella. The anvil has the bastard sword on it, and I decided to use that as my weapon for a while, since I actually have the stats for it, unlike Vike's War Spear. Even the shop has randomized items in it, although I don't have any runes to spend yet. The Maiden Melina gives us the tool to call our spectral steed, which I like to call Yaki, and gives us the ability to level up. Since I haven't got any runes though, I decided to go exploring a bit to see if I can't pick up some equipment to make myself a little stronger. Pretty much everything kills me as I roam around picking stuff up. As I'm roaming around, I noticed the distinct blue armor of a Raya Lucaria soldier. With a little effort, we managed to check off the first goal. This goal, being a fairly common enemy, was good luck, but my luck normally isn't very good, so things probably won't stay this easy. When I crossed the bridge into the Weeping Peninsula, a random shiny had the Lord of Blood's robe. This is a major upgrade from being naked, so I put it on and I'm looking fine. I decided to start Irina's questline, and normally she gives you a letter to bring to her father at Castle Morn. Instead of her letter, we got a golden rune 4. I guess this questline isn't going anywhere. But I still decided to head towards Castle Morn in the hopes of finding some useful equipment, or perhaps even complete one of our goals. A little further ahead, we find our first dung beetle of the run. It drops a golden rune 2. RNGesus isn't showing us any favors so far. Even Irina's father decided to give us a golden rune 9, which admittedly isn't too bad as it can be used to get us enough runes to level up a couple of times this early in the game. I got lucky and found Lionel's Greaves just before talking to Irina's father, but I didn't think to put them on until I found some prisoner's trousers later and decided to check on my inventory. Lionel's Greaves are a pretty darn good piece of leg armor, and one I end up using for the rest of this entire randomizer run. The boss in Castle Morn turned out to be Leonai and Fia's champions. This boss seemed like a very killable boss. I would do a fairly good amount of damage with every hit, but every time I felt hope at defeating them, they would remind me what despair truly is. I'll wait for him to do attack and then we'll get him back. Oh no! I thought he would get knocked back. I didn't know he would power stance right through it. No! Since Elden Ring is an open world game, I decided to go somewhere else instead of smashing my face into their axes again. I'll have my sweet revenge later on when I'm strong enough to wreck them. I continue to explore the lands between, hoping to find some more good equipment in order to give me a fighting chance to get some items through all the tough bosses Elden Ring has. I then proceed to get wrecked by everything, until I explore the Earthbore Cave. This cave's boss ended up being a rune watchdog, and it seemed like a very killable boss. After one warm-up try, I take it seriously and use all my gaming skills to muster out a victory. The reward was a smithing stone 8. While not immediately useful, I'll need a lot of them in order to upgrade my weapon, so it's not a bad reward. Continuing to explore the lands between for more shiny loot, I decided to check out the Weeping Everjail. On my way over, I passed through the Tomes Ward ruins and picked up some Crucible gauntlets. Those will be useful later when I have more equip load. We arrive at the Weeping Everjail, and in it we find the Onyx Lord of Zamor. I seem to have found my groove by now, because this boss goes down in no time flat. I only had to use one healing flask. Moving on, I continue to gallop around on my beautiful Yaki, finding a Bloodhound Knight helm on some random body, and a few memorable friends too. I smack our good friend Alexander the Iron Fist in the butt a couple of times, skip through Roderica's depressing chat, and decide to see who replaced Margit the Fell Omen after getting blown up by the dragon guarding the castle gates. Oh, it's Niall, the Fell Omen. I decide not to suffer under his war banner and go somewhere else. I check my inventory on a whim and realize I picked up a helmet and some gauntlets somewhere and just completely forgot about them immediately after getting them. This should help with my dying problem a little bit. Melna finally decides to let us in on the fact that there's a gathering hub for the Tarnished. It's here that we get to see some good Elden fashion. After laughing at Gideon's ugly head for a while, I keep exploring around. In the Mistwoods, we find Drake Knight armor along with Irina's letter. Looks like we can progress Irina's questline after all. After exploring some more and finding tons of shiny loots, we keep getting the same disappointed feeling. Arteria leaf. Oh my gosh. As we continue exploring, this feeling of being overwhelmed haunts me as I continue to get destroyed by enemies and bosses alike, unable to discover what randomized items they protect. Since I'm getting steamrolled by most things, I decided to grab some graces while checking out Liurnia and head towards Caria Manor. And at the top of the castle, we run into what I call the outdoor meeting room, and we find a Royal Knight Leonine Misbegotten. He wipes me out pretty quickly, so I get out of there. I'll be back. After spending plenty of time on Yaki's back, roaming the lakes of Liurnia, and not managing to do anything interesting, I decided to try heading towards the Altus Plateau. There's the Grand Lift of Dectus I could take up to the plateau, but unfortunately I need the Dectus medallion to use it, and I haven't got that. So instead, we make a trek through the ruin-strewn precipice. I walk through, finding a consort's mask on a random body as I head to the top. This precipice will bring us to the plateau, but it's more dangerous than the Dectus lift because there's a boss to fight. Luckily for us, we can call a friendly Tarnished to help us, the Great Horned Tragoth. However, I was not ready for what came up next. Morgoth is a fairly tough boss, and one that I am completely unprepared to fight yet. I'm not a good enough gamer to take him on with my low level and poor equipment, so I decide to go back to the boss that I swore revenge against, the Leonine Fias champion. As I have leveled up a few times by now, increased the number of flasks I had, and could call spiritual companions into the fight now, I think I have a better chance at getting that revenge. Plus, I need a win right now after having had so much disappointment. They all fell down, and I felt great. The sweet feeling of taking revenge on a boss that killed me over and over again was awesome. With the boss of Castle Morn taken down, we can also continue Irina's questline. I head back to speak with Irina's father and deliver her letter that we picked up earlier. Then we teleport over to Irina and find, oh, she's dead. And her father swears vengeance against the ones who murdered her. Anyways, forget that for now. Let's keep exploring and try to complete some more goals. My streak of accomplishments continues as I take down the guardian of the minor Erd Tree in the Weeping Peninsula, an Erd Tree assassin, after only dying 2 times. Our reward was a Somber Smithing Stone 7 and another Arteria Leaf. I'll never stop being disappointed by that kind of a reward. I then head to the Waypoint Ruins, where a magic teacher, Selin, resides. She's defended by a mad ancient hero, who goes down only after killing us once. I'm starting to feel strong at this point, with all these bosses going down one after another. Now we can talk to Selen and see what kind of things she sells instead of her usual magics. She sells a golden seed, which is handy for our healing flask, but unfortunately there are no gold items in sight. Looks like we'll just have to keep looking. I stomp through the Limgrave tunnels and slay Stone Digger Miranda without much trouble. Having found nothing so far, I head through the coastal cave and slay the demi-human chief Royal Revenant with the help of Old Knight Istvan. He's always reliable. On the other side of the coastal cave lies the Church of Dragon Communion, where we normally purchase Dragon Communion incantations. There ends up being nothing of the consequence here, so our random journey continues. At this point, I've explored much of Limgrave and a decent amount of Liurnia, and haven't managed to accomplish much. I figure I may as well head towards Caelid, the hellscape of Elden Ring. Caelid still has a lot of items I haven't collected yet. Along the way, I hit up Summon Water Village. Instead of the usual fairy ghost, we've got his Tibia O'Neill. He gives us a beautiful painting for putting him out of his misery. Once we reach Caelid, I decide to put on the Drake Knight armor that we found with Irina's letter for better protection against all the nasty monsters that might show up. I love that dragon wing shaped cape. Our first stop in Caelid are the Caelem ruins. The basement of these ruins are guarded by a pair of mad crystalline. I take them out without much trouble and grab my reward of a smithing stone 4. Next up is the Cathedral of Dragon Communion. This area is the big brother of the Church of Dragon Communion, and typically has a much wider selection of Dragon Communion incantations. Unfortunately for us, the selection was randomized into a bunch of things we don't really need. After a disappointing shopping trip, I head into the Aeonia swamp and fight the fairy ghost that was supposed to be guarding the Summon Waters village. It's pretty funny that it's here, because Commander O'Neill should have been here. They just swapped guard duties. I spent far too long fighting the Commander Mariner, who has a ridiculous amount of health, and he just gives us a ruptured crystal tear and 3 poison grease. With the fairy ghost dead, I head into Sellia, town of sorcery. The random corpse lying on the streets of Sellia had 5 dragon hearts on it. They might come in handy to buy stuff from the Cathedral of Dragon Communion, if we need to. I leave Sellia and continue exploring more of the wasteland that is Caelid, but this is where my good luck starts to fade a bit. I start getting wrecked by enemies left and right, and no interesting items show up for quite a while. I do manage to kill a snail in this time, but I can't really say that's much of an accomplishment, considering how slowly snails crawl. Eventually, I find myself wandering the Raya Lucaria Crystal Tunnel, where I find myself face to face with myself. It's the Mimic Tear! At long last, I found another target on my list of goals. This fight is going to be a dicey one. I came in with only a single flask of Crimson Tears, which I had to use when the Mimic Tear still had almost all of its health. It wasn't looking good for me, but I pressed on. I slashed, sliced, diced, and chopped this Mimic Tear up until it had less than half health. And then this happened. It healed itself. I was having a hard time as it was already, and it didn't need to rub it in my face that it could heal too. So I pushed forward, slashing and slicing and dicing and chopping away, with my summoned page firing shots from a safe distance, until finally, I did it! I slew the Mimic Tear first try with only a single healing flask and my trusty page at my side. Finally, I could check one more item off my list of goals. It was so satisfying to hit that checkbox and mark it as complete. I was so happy. I was finally making some progress towards completing this randomizer run. The story of my randomizer run ended up being a lot longer than I realized, so I decided to split the story up into a few videos. We managed to check off 2 of my randomizer goals this time, making pretty decent progress in such a heavily randomized world. See you in the next part of my randomized goals playthrough of Elden Ring. Remember to like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye!